Well, if you were crying or drinking your way through the second and third intermissions during Wednesday night's hockey game, you may have missed what PJ Stock, Kelly Rudy, and Ron McLean had to say. Stock is a retired professional hockey player, one of the elite athletes who has chops. He's a radio broadcaster and TV analyst who prefers cheap neckties over Don Cherry's loud attire. It is, I'm sorry, I read it. What? It is my pleasure to welcome PJ Stock.
Hold on a second. What do you mean cheap neckties?
Well, I read it. I hope it's true. Is it true you love neckties? Let's start there. No?
No, I don't love neckties. And the cheap thing, what happened?
I don't know.
That's funny.
Somebody wrote it.
I know. Well,
is it
do you believe everything you read?
No.
Okay,
so I want you to correct me.
Well, in the world of TV that we're all in, some of the people go out and spend a lot of money on ties. A lot of money on ties. But
yes.
Very often after TV, we'd go out or when I played, we'd go out and have dinner after, have a drink after, or whatever, and you'd spill it on those really expensive ties, and you can't fix them. So you just get the cheap ones.
I see.
So no one can tell the difference on TV.
There is truth to this.
You're
not a bow tie.
Really expensive.
You're not a bow tie guy. No.
No.
Okay, so hockey, the first sport you loved?
Yeah, I love sports. I love all sports. Growing up in Montreal, it was the area that I grew up in. It's a great area. There was every square mile had you had a baseball field, soccer field, tennis courts, a swimming pool, and then in the winter, most of that area became rinks. So it was great. I loved all sports, but hockey is my number one passion.
And when did that little Stanley Cup dream start bubbling in your head? Were you playing junior? Were you playing
you know what? Every kid in Canada, I think, could probably. They're all watching this right now. They're all watching the playoffs go on, and you fall in love with. It's a story. No matter if you're not a hockey fan, you're becoming one. You don't have much of a choice, and you get into it, and then you start picking out players who I like that guy, and then you're playing street hockey. Even if you're playing baseball, you're like, oh, I'm Ryan Kessler, or I'm Roberto Luongo, or I'm whoever. So that's kind of. I never really thought of myself as winning the Stanley Cup, but you thought of for me it was Chris Chelios. I wanted to be Chris Chelios when I was.
See, all young men and now young women.
Yeah.
We don't have as many to follow, but want to be somebody hot and sporty when we grow up.
I wasn't thinking of the hot aspect. I was thinking of
sporty,
the sporty thing, and him being really good and at what he did.
Okay, Philip Joseph Stock, who named you PJ?
Well, I'm the third.
Right.
And it's great. You already threw the Philip Joseph out there. That was kind of the PJ was.
Well,
so my grandfather was Philip. My dad was Phil.
Yes.
And I feel like they're serenading us.
I know. What is that?
This is nice.
Maybe we're going to. Well, we're afraid to light the cauldron again.
Well,
you know what happened when we did that.
Well, got really pumped up the squad.
Boy.
But and I'm the third. So Philip. My teachers used to call me Philip, and.
So there you go. PJ's
Philip.
good. When you weren't behaving.
Yes.
Yes, and Coach would call you that, I'm sure, too, when you weren't behaving, or did they bother? Let's go to...
that was a jab and you're trying to get in, eh? You're throwing the necktie out, the jab, the coach out.
Jab.
Yeah.
Well, you've done this. You know who has to be in control, of course.
Yes.
Brad Zima wrote an article, I think yesterday's Sun, and said, here's his analysis. The last game, defense sucks, pretty much in shambles. Top offensive players not producing, once vaunted power play sputtering, goaltending shaky. Agree or disagree with all of that, any of that? Let's start with the defense. Bieksa always
I love Bieksa.
alive and well.
Yeah, I think the whole thing about a 7-game series is you go into the first game, with your game plan, and it might work, it might not work. Obviously, for Vancouver Canucks, it worked for Game 1, Game 2. But the whole thing about the playoffs in a 7-game series is you react, you learn. What do you learn every game about that other team that you can use against them in Game 3 or Game 4 or Game 5? And I think that the Bruins have been able to adapt and learn from Games 1 and Game 2. And what they've been doing is they've realized that, the Vancouver Canucks on defense, which was their strongest point, I thought, are injured back there. They're missing some guys now. Roma, of course, suspended 4 games. Alberts is in, and they're not really limiting their ice time. So they're trying to pick on those guys a little bit, and they're being really physical and trying to get guys like Bieksa off their game. So
and Trevor Linden always says at the end of every season we're injured, a little bit here and there.
Everyone's injured right now, and you're banged up from you play about 8 to 10 exhibition games. then you play 82 games, and now these guys are into, I don't know what the exact number is, they played 7 in the first round, then 5 and 6, you know, they're playing a lot of hockey, and they're in game 4 here. So that adds up. And you know what else people don't take into consideration? But it's warm outside. In Boston, it was crazy. It's warm in those rinks. You sweat a lot more. The travel now from east to west, I know it's minute, and people are like, well, they're paid athletes, but I've been doing it just as a, you know, as a passenger, but going from Vancouver to Boston, playing the game, and then get back in the 6, you know, the travel kicks in. All that stuff is a wear and tear over a year, and it's taking a little bit of toll.
Sure, you bet. So when you played for Boston,
what's
the feeling in that building?
Today
as
or then?
Compared,
well, this is, okay, let me.
You know, because I think every rink, arena, has a feeling.
Yes.
And there's the Boston fans or the Vancouver fans, and they call us a little neurotic.
Yeah. Well, I live in Montreal, and I played in every rink in the league. I think there's 3 that kind of stand out for me rink-wise: Montreal, Philly, and Boston. Vancouver fans, or the rink itself, and this is not a shot at anyone, but during the game they'll show, like on the big screen, you know, whales and trees and play some nice music. And
it's the West Coast.
I know, but in Boston they have like that bear eating the whale, and they have, you know, and they promote the violence and the music, and it gets everyone, all the blue collar people, all fired up, and then it's
in Boston there'd be a riot if they showed a whale.
That's kind of it's funny. But the fans really get into it. When they get the music they play is like a lot of loud, strong music, and it kind of, that building, once it gets rocking, and games 1 and 2 in Vancouver was amazing. The fans were amazing. Games 3 and games 4, it was a different fan. It was louder, a lot more violent, and I think it really helped Boston out.
And they also seem to have the Sedin's number a little bit. That Chara seemed to have Sedin's number. I don't know. I'm not a hockey analyst, but you know, Marchand kicking Kessler, and there's a lot of brutal moments. I thought
hockey's such a violent game.
It is. Well, not Olympic hockey, but you
know,
Olympic
hockey.
What the refs call, what the refs don't call, all of that, and what does that feel like for a player?
This time of year, it's so funny because, and it kind of annoys me a little. They call here's a set of rules, okay? Here are the rules. During the regular season, the 82 games, they call those rules all the time.
Right.
And then come playoffs, they start calling them, and then if it's a game 7 or a game, the referees don't. The rules are still there, but they're not calling them as much. They don't want. They know during the season, you know, it's 1 of 82 games, but they don't want to be the ones that are the deciding factor of a game. They don't want to, and I think they've been great at it, but it's gotten pretty far right now. The physicality has gone to a whole new level with the slashing, the kicking, the biting. So it's. I love what they're doing, letting them play. They don't want to be the ones that, you know, cause a goal and the team loses. So I love what they're doing, but it's so different from what they call during the regular season.
Well,
so
sure, and a ref can send a message, as you know, and perhaps will. So what do you think happened in Boston, aside from the fact that we lost?
For me, I think the biggest thing is players that players that are the straw for this team, that help stir the drink, that get them going. Kessler, Burrows, those guys. They're players that can help dictate the tempo of a play by getting the other team off their style of play. By playing physical, by even talking, by hitting, by shooting, by scoring, everything. I think they were really successful out of games 1 and games 2. On the road, what Boston's been able to learn from game 1 and game 2, they've now turned it against Vancouver. And I think the players on Vancouver that were able to frustrate the Bruins, they are now becoming very frustrated themselves. Kessler's been very frustrated. Burrows is really frustrated. They're taking bad penalties. They're getting outside of what makes this team successful. And Boston's been able to build off it. And Vancouver looks at 2 of their players that are there's a bunch of them, 2 of their guys that help, push, or I use the term stir the drink, help stir the drink, how they're off their game. And I think it's been contagious throughout the lineup.
And then Thomas is in that net.
I know Thomas is brilliant. I love him. He competes on every play. He's just, his style is ugly, but it's so ugly that it's beautiful. He works and competes on every shot, and it's tough. The person at the other end is Roberto Luongo, and people in the city are really hard on him. He's 2 games away from winning a Stanley Cup, and They're really hard on a guy who's doing some amazing stuff, but they look at him and they compare him to Timmy Thomas. And Timmy Thomas has a style that's completely different, and it's all on effort and competing.
Sure.
Whereas Roberto Luongo is more of a boring style because he's a shot blocker. So it looks like he's in the right place all the time.
He's in the right place, and all elite athletes, as you know, have to park it. They just have to ignore it if you can. Can you ignore it in the heat of the game? I don't know.
No, it's you can, but if you know that you and I aren't supposed to argue on something, but if I keep poking you, sooner or later you're gonna, and that's what it is. And then you add in 20,000 fans screaming, you add in built up stuff that has been going on, so it's
sure. And then you've got the Nathan Horton injury, terrible injury. An honest, they're all saying it, I don't know him, but an honest hockey player makes an error and gets 4 games. I thought that was a lot.
You know what? I think it's a real lot too, but I completely understand the situation. I don't think it's, I know Nathan knew the Bruins. I don't think it was that bad of a hit. The one thing that it was late. And that's the one thing you got to protect because you're not expecting it. So because it's so late, and they have to protect that. Now the Bruins have lost one of their best players for the playoffs for the remaining couple of games. I think that's why they kind of gave that suspension. It's the longest suspension ever in Stanley Cup Finals, and they've now suspended them for 4 games.
I think they didn't want the Boston press all over them.
No,
I don't know. That's a tough press.
Was that the two-handed?
I don't know. Well, because you're the hockey guy. Tell me what happens behind the scenes, Hockey Night in Canada. In between, I know that...
In between games?
Don Cherry...
We drink.
You drink? Good.
I'm joking, no. Between the night itself, it's fun. It's an amazing... It's great being on the road, too, because you get out and get to see the fans and the people, but it's a lot of... all the games going on, we got play-by-play guys that are, telling you what and why, and then we have, Don that gets all fired up and gets everybody fired up, and you're all fighting over who wants to show what clip and who's going to show what clip, and it's a lot of yelling, and at the end of the day, everyone tries to make it the best show, and the moment something goes wrong, you're like, it's live TV. You don't, and now with YouTube and Twitter, there's no hiding from anything anymore.
Well, that's the thing.
So
if you
make a mistake,
screw up, pretty much it's out there.
It's out there,
and it's everywhere. It goes viral.
I know.
Even Don Cherry goes viral. I did like his point about the shoulder pads, the new hockey gear, the other night, where he said they're just too stiff.
You know what?
We should go back to a soft pad. What do you think?
Put anything on. The whole thing is and nothing disagreeing with Don, but it's the speed of the game that is the big thing. It's just take 2 cars, and I don't care what kind of bumpers they have, driving at 30 kilometers an hour and have them bump into each other. Now have 2 cars driving at 60 kilometers an hour and have them bump into each other. The output from the accident of the cars going that much quicker is going to be that much greater. And that's what you have now. You have not 2 bodies going at this speed. You got 2 bodies going at this speed, and they're hitting each other. I'm dumbfounded by the amount of concussions right now. But
I'm sure.
But the padding is one thing, but if my straight shoulder to your face isn't going to make things much better.
Oh, no, I wouldn't get up ever if you hit me. I'd be like down.
Yeah.
For the count.
Because of a big
Trust
shoulder,
me,
right?
You don't have to try. No, anybody hits me going that fast, I'm done. Yeah. Home ice advantage. Yeah. Good thing tonight. Does it help? We certainly talk about it.
Great thing tonight. Game 1, I was nervous for Vancouver. Not tonight. I think it's so important. I think the first goal in tonight's game is so important because Bruins now have this little snowflake that's turned into a huge snowman. How about that? It's snowballs. It's just been rolling. Vancouver has to find a way to just take some momentum away from what Boston's been able to create. And they need that first goal. And the fans are so important. And it's important for the Vancouver fans to understand, get off Roberto tonight. He's your most important player is your goalie. And Vancouver fans need to support him. He needs to be great. He needs those saves early. If Boston gets that first goal, it could be tough because the fans could turn on Luongo. They can turn.
And I'll tell you, Luongo has great hair. I don't care what those Boston people say about his hair. It's great hair. It's European. It's fabulous, and he is a great goalie.
He is
an incredible goalie.
Yes.
How nice to see you.
Oh, so nice to see you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'll get you a tie.
Okay, that'd be good.
Yeah, cheap one.
Okay, I like that. I'll take whatever. PJ Stock, Hockey Night in Canada.